Have you ever watched someone act like consequences do not exist and secretly wondered when reality would finally answer back? And have you ever had a moment where life corrected you so sharply that it felt personal, like the universe looked straight at your choices and said enough? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are walking into a story about karma that feels blunt and dramatic on the surface, but carries a deeper message underneath. Because what people casually call karma is not a magical slap from the sky. Most of the time, it is cause and effect finally catching up with the part of us that thought we could run forever. It is the bill arriving after a long season of spending. It is the echo of your own voice returning to you after you shouted into the canyon. And since the source title mentions a December 2025 update, we are going to treat this like a return visit to a story that did not end the first time it was told. Some lessons are not one and done. Some lessons come in chapters. You think you learned it, then life tests you again. You think you changed. Then the old habit tries to sneak back in wearing a new outfit. Karma is not just what happens to you. Karma is what you keep practicing until the pattern breaks. So let me introduce you to a character I will call as Rhea, not because names matter more than meaning, but because a story needs a face for the lesson to land. As Rhea had a talent that made people both admire and fear her. She could make a room revolve around her emotions. She could turn attention into currency. She could turn sympathy into protection. She could turn conflict into a stage where she always played the victim and the hero at the same time. If someone confronted her, she would cry. If someone questioned her, she would accuse. If someone tried to leave, she would threaten to collapse emotionally so they would stay. Now I want to be careful here. People like this are not cartoon villains. They are usually hurt people who learned survival strategies early. But survival strategies that were useful in one season become toxic when they are used to control others in another season. That is where karma begins. Not because the universe hates you, because reality cannot stay twisted forever without snapping back. As Rhea grew up in a home where love felt unpredictable, some days affection poured like warm light. Other days it vanished with no explanation. As a child, she learned to scan faces like a weather forecast. She learned to anticipate moods. She learned that if she could control the emotional temperature of the room, she could keep herself safe. So she became very good at emotional influence. At first it was unconscious. Later it became a habit. Then it became an identity. She started believing she was simply special, simply misunderstood, simply the one who deserved extra patience. And for a while, life rewarded her. Friends excused her behavior because she was charming when she wanted to be. Partners stayed because the highs were high and the lows felt like they were their fault. Teachers and co-workers gave her extra chances because she always had a story that made her look like the one trying hardest. She began to believe consequences were for other people. This is the dangerous part of any karmic cycle, not the harm itself, but the illusion of immunity. When you think you are untouchable, you stop reflecting. When you stop reflecting, you stop growing. When you stop growing, your choices become heavier and heavier until even you cannot carry them. Then came the first crack. It was small. A friend stopped answering, not with a dramatic breakup text, just silence. At first, as Rhea assumed the friend was busy, then she felt the familiar heat tries in her chest. The heat that said, I am being rejected. The heat that said, I need to regain control. So she sent messages that sounded caring but were actually hooks. Are you okay? I miss you. Did I do something wrong? Please do not ignore me. No reply. The silence felt like an insult. Saw the caring mask slipped and the accusation mask came on. Wow, I guess I do not matter to you. I always show up for you and you cannot even respond. You are so selfish. Still no reply. That is when the first consequence appeared. Not a punishment from the sky. A boundary from another human being. A boundary that said, I will not participate in your emotional storm anymore. As Rhea spiraled, she told herself the friend was cruel. She told other people the friend abandoned her. She gathered sympathy like a shield. But deep down, a quiet fear began to grow. What if people are starting to see through me? That fear became the seed of the December 2025 update, because by late 2025, as Rhea had repeated the same pattern in more than one relationship, she would pull people close, test them, punish them for failing the test, then cry about being hurt when they finally pulled away. The pattern was so consistent that even people who loved her began to feel exhausted. This is how karma becomes visible, not through fireworks, through repetition. The same ending showing up again and again, until you either call it bad luck or you finally admit it is a pattern you are helping create. Now here is where the story turns. In early December 2025, as Rhea started dating someone I will call Miles. Miles was calm in a way that felt unfamiliar. He did not react dramatically. He did not argue loudly. He did not chase her moods. He listened. He spoke clearly, and he did not get pulled into emotional chaos. At first, as Rhea loved this, it felt safe. It felt stable. But then her nervous system interpreted stability as danger, because stability meant she could not control the temperature of the room anymore. And when she could not control, she felt powerless. So she started testing Miles. She would cancel plans last minute to see if he would beg. She would flirt with other people to see if he would get jealous. She would go silent to see if he would panic. Miles responded the same way each time. Calm, direct, boundary. When you cancel last minute repeatedly, I feel disrespected. If it happens again, I will not keep making plans. When you flirt to provoke jealousy, that is not love. That is manipulation. I will not compete for basic respect. If you go silent to punish me, I will give you space. I will not chase you. Those responses shocked Rhea. She had never met someone who refused to play the game. And when someone refuses to play, the game collapses and you are left facing yourself. She felt anger, then panic, then shame. But instead of turning inward, she tried one final move. She created a crisis. Not necessarily a fake crisis in the obvious sense, but a crisis amplified. She took a real emotion and turned it into a weapon. She cried on the phone and said she could not handle life. She hinted that if Miles left, she might do something drastic. She used fear to chain him. Miles went quiet. Then he said something that became the turning point of her karmic story. I care about you, and I will not be held hostage by your pain. If you are struggling, I want you to get real support, but I cannot be your emergency plan. That is not love. That is control. As Rhea felt the floor drop inside her. In her mind, control had always been love. Control meant safety. Control meant you cannot leave me. Miles did not yell. He did not insult. He simply refused. And that refusal was the beginning of the December 2025 consequence. Miles stepped back, not with cruelty, with clarity. He told her he needed distance. He told her he would not continue the relationship unless she was willing to take responsibility for her patterns and get help. As Rhea reacted the way her old self always reacted, she told everyone he was heartless. She framed herself as the abandoned one. She posted vague messages that hinted at betrayal without naming it. But something different happened this time. People did not rush in the way they used to. Some stayed quiet. Some offered gentle support but did not attack Miles. Some even said things as Ria was not ready to hear. "We love you, but you have been doing this for a long time. You push people and then blame them for stepping back." That sentence felt like a slap. As Ria wanted to explode, she wanted to cut them off. She wanted to find new people who would take her side automatically. But there was a problem. Her circle had changed. They had matured. They had learned boundaries. They had their own healing. They were no longer the kind of people who would drown to keep her afloat. So as Ria felt alone in a way she had never felt before. Not the dramatic loneliness of being single, but the deeper loneliness of realizing your usual tricks no longer work. This is the moment where many people either wake up or get worse. Because when manipulation stops working, you can choose humility or you can choose escalation. You can choose awakening or you can choose bitterness. You can choose wisdom or you can choose to become a permanent storm. As Ria chose escalation at first, she tried to expose Miles publicly. She hinted at private details. She tried to turn people against him. She tried to rewrite the story so she would not have to face the mirror. But the public did not respond the way she expected. Some people saw through it. Others simply did not care. And a few who did care asked the question that ended her performance. What did you do to contribute to this? That question is karmic medicine. It feels harsh to the ego. It feels unfair when you are attached to being the victim. But it is the doorway to freedom. Because if you contributed, you can change. If you contributed, you have power. If you contributed, you are not trapped in fate. You are in cause and effect. By the end of December 2025, as Ria hit a point she could not deny, her strategies were failing. Her relationships were thinning. Her nervous system was exhausted. Her sleep was broken. She felt like she was living inside a siren. This is where the deeper spiritual layer enters. In Buddhist wisdom, suffering often comes from clinging to control, clinging to identity, clinging to the image of being right, clinging to the need to be chosen. The more you cling, the more life feels like it is ripping things away from you. But life is not ripping to punish. Life is ripping to reveal. It is showing you what you have been gripping so tightly that you forgot how to breathe. As Ria did not think of it in those words, she just felt tired. One night, she sat on her bedroom floor with the lights off. Her phone was face down for once. She did not want to scroll. She did not want to perform. She did not want to talk. She simply wanted the noise to stop. She remembered something Miles had said earlier in the month. Something almost casual. When I feel overwhelmed, I do a simple breathing practice. Sometimes I hum on the exhale. It calms the body. At the time, as Ria had rolled her eyes, now she tried it. She inhaled. Then she hummed softly as she exhaled. The vibration filled her chest and throat. It felt strange at first. Then it felt grounding, like her body was finally receiving a signal that it could settle. She did it again and again. The thoughts were still there, but they slowed just a little. For the first time in a long time, she could feel the ache under the drama, not the anger, the fear of being unlovable, the fear of being left, the fear of being ordinary, the fear that if she stopped performing, she would disappear. She started crying, quietly, not for attention, just because the body needed release. This is another form of karma. When you stop feeding the outer storm, the inner truth rises, not to punish you, to heal you. That night became her private turning point. Not a perfect transformation, not a sudden enlightenment, but the first honest moment. She began to see her life differently. She remembered times she made people apologize for things they did not do, just so she could feel power. She remembered times she threatened to leave to make someone beg her to stay. She remembered how she used silence like a weapon. She remembered how she trained people to walk on eggshells around her. The memories hurt, but instead of pushing them away, she stayed with the breath and the hum. She let the pain be there without turning it into another performance. The next morning, she did something that surprised even her. She apologized to one friend without adding excuses. Not "I am sorry you feel that way." Not "I am sorry but you did this too." Just "I am sorry. I have been unfair. I am working on it." The friend responded carefully, not instantly forgiving, but respectful. They said they appreciated the honesty, and they also said they needed time. As Ria felt the urge to panic and demand reassurance, she felt the old hunger rising. Then she breathed. She hummed softly. She let the urge pass without obeying it. That is practice. That is cultivation. That is awakening in real life. Over the following weeks, the consequences continued. Miles did not rush back. Some people stayed distant. Some relationships never returned to what they were. This is important. Karma does not always restore what you lost. Sometimes karma teaches you through loss, not to make you suffer, but to show you what your actions create. And here is the most meaningful part of the update. As Ria began to understand that consequences are not the enemy, consequences are the teacher. When you avoid consequences, you avoid growth. When you accept consequences, you learn wisdom. She started therapy or mentoring in a way that fit her life. She started journaling not to craft a story for others, but to hear herself honestly. She kept the humming practice because it helped her nervous system not hijack her mind. She learned to pause before reacting. She learned to ask for what she needed directly instead of testing people. She learned to tolerate uncertainty without creating drama to fill the space. Not perfectly, but enough to change her direction. This is destiny shifting. Destiny is not a fixed script. Destiny is a direction shaped by repeated choices. When, as Ria changed her repeated choices, she changed her future. Now let us talk about the phrase karma turns around fast, because people love the idea of instant karma. They love watching someone get humbled. It feels satisfying, but if we only treat karma as entertainment, we miss the teaching meant for us. The real question is not who deserves what. The real question is, what seeds am I planting right now? If you plant honesty, you will harvest trust. If you plant manipulation, you will harvest distance. If you plant compassion, you will harvest softness. If you plant control, you will harvest loneliness. That is not a curse. That is arithmetic. And the most compassionate truth is this: even if you planted harmful seeds in the past, you can plant new seeds now. The old harvest may still arrive, but the new planting changes what comes next. That is why wisdom traditions emphasize practice, not guilt, not self-hatred. Practice. If this story resonates, maybe it is because you have seen a version of it in someone else. Or maybe you have seen it in yourself. Maybe you have used silence as punishment. Maybe you have tested people instead of trusting them. Maybe you have tried to control outcomes because you were terrified of being left. If so, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not doomed. You are not your worst habit. You are a human nervous system that learned strategies to survive. But survival is not the same as love. Survival is not the same as wisdom. The moment you see the pattern, you can begin to transform it. The transformation is not dramatic. It is small choices repeated. A pause before you send the message. A breath before you accuse. A moment of honesty instead of a performance. A willingness to feel discomfort without turning it into control. A decision to repair instead of retaliate. That is the path out of karmic loops. Now let me share the kind of reflection that often creates real empathy, because it is easy to judge Azria from a distance. Harder to see the Azria parts in ourselves. I have seen people who were scared of abandonment act in ways that guaranteed abandonment. They would squeeze too tight, then blame the other person for wanting air. They would demand constant proof of love, then complain that love felt forced. They would turn every disagreement into a test, then feel shocked when the relationship became exhausted. When those people finally learned to regulate their nervous system, everything shifted. They could feel anxiety without obeying it. They could ask directly instead of manipulating. They could hear no without collapsing. They could love without chains. This is why practices like breath and gentle sound matter, not as trends, but as tools. Because when your body is calm, your mind becomes wise enough to choose differently. And when you choose differently, your karma changes. So here is the deeper lesson of the December 2025 update. The universe did not hit Azria because it hated her. Life simply stopped cooperating with her illusions. And when illusions collapse, you either suffer blindly or awaken consciously. Azria began to awaken, not as a saint, as a real person learning, as a soul shifting direction, as someone finally realizing that love cannot be forced and respect cannot be extracted. Now it is your turn to bring the story into your own life. Where are you still trying to control what should be met with trust? Where are you still performing instead of being honest? Where are you still punishing people with silence or drama instead of speaking truth plainly? And if you recognize a pattern, what is one small practice you can repeat that would plant a new seed? Maybe it is a daily minute of slow breathing. Maybe it is humming on the exhale when you feel reactive. Maybe it is writing one honest sentence before you speak. Maybe it is asking for support instead of threatening. Small things, repeated, become destiny. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you have ever lived through a moment where consequences forced you to grow, share what happened and what you learned. If you have ever broken a cycle you thought would last forever, tell your story so someone else can borrow your courage. Please subscribe to the channel, press like, and leave a comment to support these long-form stories and reflections. And remember, karma is not here to destroy you. Karma is here to teach you. When you learn the lesson, the pattern can finally change.